you don't want to miss a tiny bit of everything that will be discussed today. We'll not just be speaking, we'll also be doing a demonstration of what our topic is: human to agents, agent to human, the future of security operations. If you're busy eating, pause. If you're doing something else, you need to pause and pay max attention. All right, for those just joining us and interacting with Essentially for the first time, I would like to introduce Essentially to you. Who is Essentially? What we do here at Essentially and our services. So Essentially is a managed service security provider, and we help small, medium, large scale enterprises, by providing high impact cyber security services end to end, and we function as your dedicated security provider by bridging the gap between complex technology and actually good defense. And in the chat box, sorry, and we'll be putting our user handles, our page handles for everyone to follow if you're not following Essentially yet. You follow us, get to know what it is that we do, follow our services, content, and thought leadership posts that we turn out daily. And our managed service security services span across security engineering, security operations center, digital forensics and incident response, threat intelligence, cyber offense, and a virtual chief information security officer. And not to omit is why we're here, the AI agentic security operations. So I have on the call with me CBO Olabo Awelewa and speaker Rotimi Akinwumi that would be drilling down on our topic for today. And just ready your question, pen it down, and drop it, in the chat box. We'll be looking out for it. So not to take too much of our time, I'll be passing the mic now to our CBO Kolabo to introduce our speaker and commence the webinar proper. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ayomide. Thank you very much. Good day, everybody. Because I'm sure we're connecting from different parts of the world. It's always a pleasure to be back on our webinar series. And yes, this time around we have a very exciting topic and even a more exciting speaker. I'm particularly biased with this guy because we've known from way back. Also, for those that don't know our speaker Rotimi, he's the convener of possibly before I do his official reading of, the profile, he's the convener of probably the biggest group of cybersecurity specialists that are Nigerians, and I think we kicked off them before the pandemic. And during the pandemic, we blew out. We used to do sessions, and it was a massive gathering. And so when the opportunity came for us to have this session, of course, he's the most fitting for the topic based on the amount of work he's done with regards to agentic services generally, not just even cybersecurity. For me, it was like a reunion that yes, we're doing it again. Niger second, let's make it happen. So let me read his profile. Rotimi Akinyele has spent about 2 decades building, breaking, and securing products. Keyword building and breaking. I like that. Securing products, services, and companies across the Middle East and Africa. He currently runs, security and AI engineering at a global fintech trading platform, where he oversees offensive security, SOC, application security, security architecture, cloud security, GRC, identity and access management, and AI engineering. As part of his work too, it involves building agentic fraud detection systems, deploying AI-powered security agents into production, and also running one of the region's most active AI security transformational programs. That's a lot. So welcome, Rotimi. It's a pleasure having you here, and we being on the session again.
Thanks, Bolabo, for the introduction. Thank you.
Yes. So before we kick off, just to even set the context for the session and what the objective is So the title of our webinar is Human to Agent, Agent to Human, the Future of Security Operations. And, today, the Security Operations Center, SecOps management is under a lot of pressure. Alert volumes are increasing, threat actors are becoming more sophisticated. And yes, the traditional security stack, built around multiple tools, one SaaS tool, one on-premise tool, results in alert fatigue, operational bottlenecks, of course, there's the cost angle to things too. But at the same time, there's also advancement in machine learning, and intelligent agents that have come on to the fore, and they are redefining how security teams operate. So instead of relying on solely on manual investigation of fragmented tools, organizations are supposed to, can now design systems where humans and AI agents can collaborate, which is why we're here. From log ingestion, anomaly detection to triage, and even incident closure. So today, at this session, we're looking at exploring modern security operations, you know, that look like, when we build around human to agent, agent to human collaboration. Obviously, this is breaking all that jinx around thinking you can run everything leveraging, artificial intelligence. The idea is to be able to leverage artificial intelligence and integrate the human factor. And here we'll be drawing from real world experiences, building, an AI driven SOC, without reliance on traditional solutions, whether the same platforms or EDR. And the discussion will focus on how agents, intelligent agents can augment both defensive, which is blue teaming, and adversarial operations, which is the red teaming, while also maintaining, human oversight and control generally. So we'll be looking at the limitations of traditional tool-heavy SOC models and why automation done alone is not enough. So I think we should just kick right into it immediately. Rotimi, from your own experience, what would you say, what you've seen so far from an overview, what would you say the evolution of modern security operations, the challenge, of changing SOC landscape, um, challenges with traditional security operations, and why, why should we go for human to agent collaboration, or why is it the future, or why should we even do it now? I know it's a lot, but I'll read it again. Evolution of modern security operations, and then you can pick on the changing SOC landscape, and then discuss the challenges with traditional security operations.
All
Over to
right.
you, Ruth.
So this is an interesting topic for me. And of course, please in the chat, you can keep your questions coming as we go through this. And so I say it's interesting, and the reason is this, right? So traditionally, right, you would have, maybe 13 people if you do the follow the sun approach for SOC, right? Because you want people, you want eyes on the glass, you want people just checking dashboards, 247.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want, level one, so you'd have level one, level two, level three. Typically you want that to look like a funnel, right? So you would have a lot of level one resources, maybe six, and then you'd have a bit of level
Mm-hmm.
two, and then you have maybe one or two level three.
Mm-hmm.
And so it means that, people then you need to manage how the shifts would work. You need to manage, who needs to work when, who needs to work weekends, etc. And then there's just a lot of administrative, management that you need to do, not to talk of the fact that you would have varying skill sets, right, on the team. So you would have maybe two, three level ones working, and then you have one
Mm-hmm.
level three that oversees whatever they're doing, and then they have all kinds of escalations and all that. And so when you look at it from that angle, you realize that that is extremely tough. That is actually a tough job to do, right? Just being able to coordinate the entire thing. And so which is why there's a need, right? There's a need for organizations to start moving into AI assisted security operations centers. And I like to say AI assisted because they're different school of thought. There are school of thought that think that, AI can take over, the entire security operation landscape, end to end. There's a school of thought that feel or believe that, AI can support, they can kind of assist, and it all depends on, where individuals or organizations are with the journey. For some organizations, for example, they started by just, they've just taken level one SOC work, which is pretty much, eyes on the glass. You see some alert, oh, this is a phishing email, you can close it out or do some investigations, or even escalate that to a level two or level three, right? So some organizations are saying, you know what, we might as well just, give this level one work to an agent, right? So they will go out there, they will buy a solution, those ones will slap like AI all over the solution, and then you'd have like, level one being taken care of. But over time, we're starting to see that change as well. So there are some organizations that are quite bullish, about the entire AI, security operation centers. I see some of my colleagues are on the call as well. Some of them they just, I'm looking outside my office now, and I can see them looking, and
Oh,
some of them genuinely believe in, I think AI can take over everything, right? Considering that some of them are AI engineers. They believe that,
okay.
L1, L2, L3 can be taken care of by AI. But again, we'll,
Oh,
we'll, we'll go
yeah.
through this. We'll go through this, during the course of this webinar.
That will be bands for another day.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
But yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, yeah, I think that, yeah, I think that, there's a lot of role that AI plays in security operations, and some of them will be delving into deeply during the course of this webinar.
Okay, so Rotimi, before we jump into, I know you are itching already for the practical session for you showing us and telling us as you go. So I think what we could do is that. So I want you to talk about specific challenges, defined use cases, and why the human agent collaboration. Well, we state it as the future, but we're just saying it's now because the truth is, for your implementation or adaptation of agentic services, it has to be you. From what you're saying, the best combination is the agent to human, right? Eventually. So why? So speak to the challenges, specific use cases that obviously you will talk about. You will show us soon, and then why agent human? Why is it important? Agent and human set collaboration.
Okay, so I think a couple of points there. I mean, the starting point for me would be efficiency. So usually when you get a SOC alert, right, in any organization, the first thing you're doing is you're racing against time, right? And
Mm,
I always tell this to colleagues as well, right? So you get an alert, the first thing you're thinking is, is this true positive or false positive? Are we really
mm,
impacted or not? Do we have
mm,
an attacker in our networks or not? How deep has this person gone? Has this person done
mm,
lateral movement or not? Yeah, pretty
mm,
much how screwed are we right now? And you want
mm,
to be able to
mm,
answer the question as fast as possible, right? So traditionally, you would have, different, I see the emojis. Traditionally, you would have different you'd have different people
mm.
working on this, right? So you'd have L1, L2. Maybe the L3 guy, for example, is not, he's not working at the moment. You need to call the guy on the phone. Of course, some of us on the call, we've been in these situations, right? So you call the guy, or let's say, for example, of course, depending on the different geolocation, right? You're stuck in marina traffic. You've just left work. You're there in traffic, you don't even have your laptop with you, and you just get a call that there's an incident and you need to jump on the call. And the first thing you're thinking
Mm.
is you're looking at the traffic and you realize that it will take you about an hour or two for you to get to wherever you're going to, right? And so it means that there's just time lost in that sense, right? And so you see this applicable as well, right? In a lot of cases. So one point is, how do we reduce our mean time to respond, right? So mean time to detect, I think a lot of organizations, a lot of solutions are out there already in the market. But how do we reduce that mean time to respond? How do we take that from 30 minutes or 1 hour, whatever it is, to 1 to 2 minutes or 3 minutes, right? So that becomes one of the core questions that, a lot of organizations, want to be able to answer, right? But the other point is in terms of cost optimization, and of course, there are different school of thought as well. There are people that believe that, on one end, you replace AI with humans, but again, you need to spend on LLM cost, right? Which of
Yeah.
course is becoming more
Yeah.
expensive, right? So, and
Hmm.
it's interesting for a lot of organizations because a lot of times they would, when people write like that proposal or that proposition to management, they would say, oh, you know what? Right now, the sub team currently has 30 people. We can reduce it to like 12 people by just bringing in AI, right? But then nobody's talking about the
Yeah.
actual cost you would spend on that. But again, I guess, organizations just need to kind of weigh the difference between both, and then see what makes sense for the organizations. But so that comes into the picture. The third point I would like to just call on for this as well is what we tend to see over the years is, we have a lot of vendors that would sell different things to organizations. So organizations end up having, five, six, seven, security solutions. Right. So just think about it. You get an alert, for example, from your EDR solution that says that, there's an employee that opened a Word document, or an employee opened the Outlook email and then they open a Word document and then something executed right within it. Now, when you do get that, now you're thinking, okay, I want to figure out what has happened. So in your environment, you would have your next gen antivirus, and then you would have some EDR solution, which is the second thing. And the next thing is you have some web proxy agents running on that laptop, right? That's the third
Yeah.
thing. The fourth thing, you probably have some firewall somewhere if you're within the network. The fifth thing, if you're connected over VPN, for example, be it your 40 or Palo Alto or whatever the case is, then you're looking at your VPN
Yeah.
traffic in there, you know.
Mm.
And then you're thinking, oh, this must have passed through email. So I need to check my email security gateway as well, right? So we're
Yeah.
talking about six
Yeah. Yeah.
solutions now, right? And
Mm.
of course, I could keep on going on. So
That's
you
a
take all
lot.
those six solutions, and traditionally, what would you do? Then every system would have like system owners. So there's a guy that has
Mm.
access to one solution, the other guy doesn't have access to the solution. And then now everybody needs to jump on the call. And you're like, oh, can you check this email? Check the email security gateway, let's see what came in. And then, you have like different people you need to interact with, the different systems you need to speak with. And you need to start now digging deep into all these various systems, right? And so one
Mm.
of the things we tend to see, right, with AI, one of the things we tend to see with AI is that first off, you're able to aggregate all of that data. Of course, okay, before AI even comes into the picture, right? Just old school data science, right? So you get those data aggregated somewhere, and then it's faster for you to do triage, for you to do investigations, for you to have like multi-agents just speaking to each other, and be able to get work done. So I'm just going to stop there. But of course, I could go on and on and on as to why most organizations need to adopt AI in what they're doing. One of the examples, I'll just touch on this. One of the examples I like to give is, so my team, let's say for example, you get an alert, right? One of the things I always tell the guys is the beauty of the job now is you could be on a flight to whatever country, right? You get on the plane, you connect to the Wi-Fi, and then there's an alert that comes in. But you know that there are like two, three agents that are already doing the triage. They're doing initial triage, they're digging deep into it. One is doing malware analysis, one is checking out the iOS, one is coming up with like detection engineering things that you need to put in place and all that. And all you just need to do is you're just looking at your phone, you don't even have your laptops out. You're just checking Slack and you just see agents just doing their magic there, and just taking charge. So I think that becomes the beauty for security
Mm.
operations. And of course, it becomes an interesting thing for a lot of organizations to adopt as well. Let me just pause for now, Volabo.
Yeah.
And
No,
yeah.
no, no, no. So you've hit it because while you were even just talking about those case studies, which is the scenarios of okay, there's a breach or there's a possible incident, and the different control points you need to check, even if they're not siloed, yeah, you still need to engage specific people handling specific things, and then before you know it, the typical triage takes almost a day because you need get access from this, link it to that other system, get this person available. Meanwhile, in fact, the most interesting part is look at the traffic or the travel use case where normally you would need to get someone on a call. So either the person is awake or the network is good enough compared to just through the access to your agent, you trigger your agent and it kicks off immediately and they start the job. and then let's say it's a 1 hour flight, you land, you see outputs from your agents, and you take things forward as a human, and you move it on to the next level. So like it makes a lot of sense, and I think the good thing with agentic is you can't even talk about it too much. You would start sounding like a motivational speaker, yeah, which is why we are the show and tell section. So, Rotimi, what you would do is so show and tell, human to agent, agent to human, specific use cases. So give us like a practical demonstration, AI-driven security operations from a security operations center perspective. Touch base on threat hunting, vulnerability management. Obviously, I know a lot of people on this session for the pen testing bit, pen testing, and an area where a lot of businesses are not paying attention to because they reach out to do pen tests is security application security testing. Secure application security testing, it's become very critical. And so it would be good if we touch base on that too, so that, we can feel a bit of value concerning that. So over to you. So people, while you're at it, while Rotimi is setting up and transitioning into his labs, please feel free to follow us on, LinkedIn, eSentry for our journey with regards to agentic security. We'll be rolling out agentic security services to our customers. We've started, and the journey is to, transition our existing customers and, of course, onboard new customers. So please feel free to also ask questions that have been bothering you. Maybe Rotimi can answer some questions for you while we're at it. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start. Let me see if you can see my screen. Okay, cool. So I'll start from the left, right? So what I've done is um, so internally, within where I currently work, we do have a lot of AI engineers, but at the same time, we also have very talented, security professionals. So what we've seen over time is, we've been able to cement that relationship between AI engineers and even the functional teams. And so something interesting I always tell my teams now that, we don't need to wait for AI engineers, to get things done. They can just build agents on their own. So for this seminar, one of
Mm,
the things I've done is to take some of the learnings that we've had for I think about 2 years now. So internally, we've been on this journey for about 2 years. We're very big on Slack. Most of our communication, everything, happens within Slack. So it just became very easy for us to, start building agents on Slack. Because anyways, this is how we do work. So what I've done over here is to just create another Slack workspace, and just so we can just go through this. So we'll start. Agents.
right.
So yeah, I took some interesting names here. Shout out to some of them if they're on the call. Um, so we have Charles. Charles is our L1 SOC analyst. Shout out to Charles Chibueze. I'm not sure if he's on the call. We have Chinedu, the pen
Charlie
tester.
Manson. Charlie.
We have we have Chinedu, the pen tester. Shout out to Chinedu, top guy. We have
You they
Fola.
use all your friends.
We have Fola Jimmy, the vulnerability manager. We have Iyado. Iyado, I see Iyado is on this call. We have Iyado, the secure code expert, and then we have Shadi. I always like to use the name Shadi, but
Nice.
internally
Gender
it's just
balance, in it.
we need to do what we need to do. So I'll start with vulnerability management, right? So for a lot of organizations, right, you'd have your core list or you have your Nessus or whatever the case might be. And so you would already schedule vulnerability assessment, right? So of course, these are things we already do, right? This is our bread and butter. So we'd configure our segments, for some organizations, they also have more maturity, right, in that sense. So for example, one good example could be, you could automate or have a script that logs in into your DNS registrar, could fetch all the subdomains you have. So instead of using Subfinder or any of those tools out there, you can just pull all of that, and then do a scan every day. So it checks all the IP addresses, or the domains. It checks the ports that are running, the services that are running on the port, and then it says if there are vulnerabilities, the etc. So all of this we already do, right, for a lot of organizations. But again, the challenge is this. For some organization, they have that maturity where they're able to schedule some of these vulnerability scans, right? So they can say, okay, every week I want to do this, or every month I want to do this, right? But eventually, when they have that vulnerability report, then how do they do the initial analysis, right? Which is where the triage comes into the picture, because you have a vulnerability report. Now, not all vulnerability scanners, are able to tell you if the vulnerability is an actual vulnerability or not. It just tells you, oh, this is critical, right? But again, is this actually critical in your environment? Is this exploitable? Is this a publicly exposed asset or not? Or is this an internal asset that is just right behind two, three firewalls where there's no public leg or any public accessibility? So one of the things that organizations tend to do, especially with AI, is just to automate the initial triage. So, and a couple of things that we can do. Yes, I made this very simple. It was just something I was playing with yesterday, but we can further expand this, right? So within our organization, for example, this is fully expanded, but I'll just walk through it. So let's say, for example, you get a report, right? So let me zoom in so it becomes bigger. So you get a report, right? So this could be a Qualys, for example. So Qualys has highlighted that, and of course you can do grouping as well. So even though I'm posting now as just individual vulnerabilities, but it can be grouped as well, right? So you group all the vulnerabilities and all that. And then the first thing you want to do is you want to pull your AI agent. So in this case, we have Folajimi, the vulnerability manager, right? And then what exactly is the skill? Let's ask Folajimi what Folajimi can do. So tell us about you and your skill sets. Again, guys, I set this up yesterday, so just in case it doesn't work, fingers crossed. Let's see. So I'll come back to that. So Folajimi then would go through every post, right? So let's say you have Qualys or Nessus or whatever. So Folajimi has responded. I'm the person in the room who tells you what's actually broken, why it matters, and exactly what needs to happen to fix it, right? So straight to the point, just like me, right? So Folajimi is like, I'm just going to tell you the fact. So he says, this is my core process, right? So this is what I do. So I identify the CV, analyze it, look at the CVSS score, I contextualize it. Is it actually exploitable in our environment or not? And then I tell you, the actual recommendation. And in fact, if you want me to execute as well, I can, because it all boils down to tools, right? So for AI agents, there are factors that you're looking at, right? So you want to be able to, let's say, for example, you want to be able to execute, right? All you need to do is give it the right tools, and then it can. So you can even apply the fix, whatever is required, and etc. So again, this is just demo mode, but so what we can do is every time, for example, Nessus or Qualys or whatever post into the channel, we can set Folajimi up in such a way where it doesn't even need to get tagged, right? So this, I'm just tagging it here, but it could be on auto mode, right? So every post, so it just does event subscription. Every alert that it gets within the channel, Folajimi is just going to pick that up immediately, and then it just starts assessing it. It says, oh, this is serious, etc. It checks internally, it says, can this be exploited or not? And in fact, Folajimi can even pull in the pen testing agents, for example, in here, to do an actual pen test, right? And this is where you have your agent-to-agent communication happening here. I will show more of this, as we go through the webinar, right? And so you can just access it and all that. The other thing you can do here is we can even configure it and say, okay, you know what, Folajimi for, so for example, I could say Folajimi, I could just give a random name. So Rotimi or Bolabo is the PIC responsible for Palo Alto, right? Make sure going forward, you tag him to fix. And keep checking. So you can just keep checking every 2 hours. And if it doesn't fix, escalate to his line manager, whatever that is, right? And you just give it the instruction, right? So that's all you just need to do. So when you give your agent instructions, at the end of the day, your instruction can always get saved. So right now, the framework I'm using for this setup is OpenClaw. Of course, you can always build yours, whatever works for you. or you can use a ready-made setup like this, or ready-made agent, right? And so with this, for example, I can also tell it to write it to his memory. Um, yes, good point, Olubenga. So the thing is, it goes back to the skills, right? So just to answer one of the questions that got asked in there. So it goes back to the skill, right? So a lot of times, the biggest mistake is, so the way we like to say it is garbage in, garbage out, right? So let's go through the skills for Jimmy. So I'm just gonna, while this is going on, I'm just gonna tell Jimmy to explain the skills, right? Um, so let's say I don't even need to target. Can you tell me, you know what, let me just do that in the Jimmy. Can you tell me more about your skills and your instructions, okay? And so we'll go through that, right? And so in that instruction, you can tell it, right? So you can make it as confined as possible. So you can tell it, I don't want hallucination. I need you to revalidate everything you're telling me. You can set guardrails for it and etc, etc, right? So let's go into this, right? So to your question, how do I confirm and verify? We need to ensure you do not hallucinate information. Um, Personally, I believe in, I can type it, I believe in POC, GTFO, right? So for a lot of people on the call, right, this is an old school thing where you say, you need to show me, right? If you can't show me, then it doesn't exist. So we need to ensure you do not come up with an enhanced skill file that makes sure of this, right? And so I've just pushed that to Jimmy, and then we wait, and then we see what Jimmy has to say. While we're waiting for that, there was something else I was touched on earlier, and I think this was where was it? The one I was talking about Bolabos. Where did I put that just now? I think this is somewhere here. Good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So over here, we said Bolabo is a PIC responsible for Palo Alto. Make sure, going forward, you tag him, da, 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 da. And it says, okay, now I need Bolabo Slack handle. Of course, because Bolabo is not in the channel. If Bolabo was there, automatically we'll know that. And then we just need to tell it, write it into your memory, and that's it. And so going forward, everything that has to do with Palo Alto, now you don't even need humans following up. Today, you would have the guys, the teams, managing the vulnerability management domain, just following up. All they just do is just keep following up with people. Oh, you've not patched this. Oh, this is taking too long, and etc and etc and etc. Right? So, but what we've done over time, and we see that this has really helped us. Give that up to an agent, set SLAs the same way you'd have SLAs or KPIs for vulnerability management. You set that as well. And then yeah, you just leave your agents to keep doing the follow-up. I'll just wait a little bit for this to finish. But Bolabo, if you want to interject in between, let me know before we move on to other things.
Okay. I think what we could do is
Okay.
let's take some questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you ready
Yes,
to pick
yes,
up?
yes.
Okay. No, go
Yes,
ahead.
yes.
Go ahead.
So
Go
I'm
ahead.
going through the questions in the chat as well. So for example, Olubengat, for exactly what you had said. So I told it POC or just get out, right? So and so it tells us, okay, come up with an enhanced skills, right? And then this becomes part of the guardrails that you set. So it says, this is the skill enforcement. I must always have an exec output. I must always show you a reference. I must cross-reference and not just take things at face value, right? And then he has add rules as well, right? So he has all the add rules. In fact, the other thing you could do is to say, for example, I have my pen test. I have my pen test. I'll still go to that in a bit. Chinedu, make sure you tag Chinedu for all vulnerabilities to actually confirm if this is exploitable or not. It doesn't mean the vulnerability doesn't exist, but we just want to know if it's exploitable or not, right? And I can just tell you, write that into your soul, write that into your soul/skills. Yes, Folajimi can do that. Chandra, for your question, Folajimi can do that. All you need to do is, so if you can see right here, I ask for explicit approval before touching anything. I can apply the fix and I can confirm the vulnerability is closed. But again, it all boils down to, do you want to give that power to an agent or not? What certain organizations tend to do is they have human in the loop. So they say, for example, different things. So they can, okay, I don't have Chinedu in this channel. Let's add Chinedu to the channel. So what some organizations tend to do is they have human in the loop, right? So they just need humans to respond, right? And just say, oh, this is approved or not, right? So the other thing is that if you need it to execute commands, for example, it needs to upgrade or do whatever it needs to do. You can see the snippets of that command, right? That it needs to run again, human in the loop, and then you can get that to automate it. There's certain things. So some organizations, what they tend to do is there's certain patches that you need to do that doesn't require a restart or a reboot, right? And also it depends on the environment. So let's say, for example, you have a segment where you have your test environment or you have your staging environment. Of course, who cares, right? You can just restart. Why can't you restart it? You can let your agent restart it, right? You can say, okay, for production environment, I'm not going to give you this rule, this skill set or this tool or whatever, or maybe no reachability to run command. So it all boils down to how you want to do it, right? So back to what I had said. So I said I have my pen tester here. Make sure you tag Chinedu for all vulnerabilities to actually confirm this is da da da. And then that's it. And then Chinedu comes in here also and then goes, whenever Folajimi tags me the finding, I'll test it live and report back, etc. etc. And then Folajimi then says, yes, I'm baking this now into my operational DNA. There are steps, so there are things in my workflow now, and he has add rule already. I do not call anything critical exploitable without Chinedu sign off, right? And then Chinedu sits at the top of the verification hierarchy, above all the sources, and then Chinedu actually tests, if this is exploitable or not, right? And then this is how, you kind of address that. So, Lubeng, I hope I was able to address what you have written there. There's a point here. How do agents improve in their performance with time in terms of detection and addressing attacks? So, I think a couple of things. The starting point for me would be in terms of model. I think that's how I like to answer that. Because I think that, so there are a lot of model benchmarks out there. So for whatever I'm running, I'm using Sonnet 4.6 for this. But again, some people would say, oh, maybe you could use Opus, or maybe you could use Fable. Right now, a lot of organizations have challenges with, using Fable 5 for anything cybersecurity related. Some could say you could use Gemini, 3.5, for example, or whatever the case might be, or some OpenAI model. There are benchmarks out there. Maybe I'll drop that in the chat. There's LM Arena .ai, so you can see the benchmark that people have had, and then there are benchmarks for cyber as well that people use. And so yeah, it just boils down to that. The other thing some organizations do is whilst they are doing this, they also have a supervisor agent in charge, right? So they have a supervisor agent that the only task the agent needs to do is go every day through the channel, see improvement opportunities or improvement points, write that down, and then that goes into the memory. And so the same way we're telling it now to bake it into the DNA, exactly what it said here, then it goes back as a feedback loop for the agent to learn from. There are also some organizations that have this kind of RAG setup, right? And the agent has learned the human apparatus. The agent still need to wait for. Yes, it depends. Again, it depends. So it can be very granular. So the good thing is, Olubenga, to what you're saying, the good thing is, so when we think of agents, think of it as a colleague, right? So a colleague that is extremely smart. In fact, in some cases, the colleagues are mostly smarter than we are as humans, right? So think of it that way and just say, just tell the agent whatever you want the agent to do, right? And that's how it works. In fact, one of the things we've done, for example, within my organization is just putting like authorization gates. So we're able to say, you know what, we have three authorization gates. There is authorization gate one, there's gate two, there's gate three. Gate one is owner. So it means I can give all instructions, I can retrieve any data, I can get my agent to do anything. Gate two is just read only, but within the security team. So you can say, for example, within the security team, they cannot write, they cannot edit, they can't modify, they can't do nothing. They can only just interact with the agents. And then you have gate 3 as well. So depending on the gate or whatever level authorization level you've placed the agent, then you just let the agent do whatever you think makes sense for them. So I hope I was able to answer that. I'll quickly skip that and move on to SOC. So this is just a very straightforward example, vulnerability management. We go to SOC. SOC becomes an interesting one. So I'll just quickly show us something. So let's get it to push some incidents, right? So what I've done is just to make things easy, we're going to push some samples of incidents, right? Because of course we're not connecting this to live environments. I'll just push like let's say about 5 incidents or so, right? So I'm just pushing that into the SOC channel. So let's just assume that these are actual incidents, right? So these are 5 incidents that have been posted into the channel. And so I'll come in here now. The incident have now been posted. So this was what 741, yeah. So it's just posted. So we'll quickly go through it, right? So these are the incidents. So let's pick incident 1. So let's assume that you've gotten an alert from CrowdStrike or whatever EDR solution you use, right? And so when you get an alert, what do? The first thing you do is you all run into, you log in into the dashboard, and then you're figuring out what's happened. And in some cases, you download the CSVs and you're looking at the processes and you're looking at the connections that have been made, network connections, and you're trying to see what binary has run when, what is the parent process, what's the grandparent process, what was the child process, are they making outbound traffic or not, etc., right? Depending on the case. So you see, this is a ransomware execution, da 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 da. Now I'm just going to tag the agent. Again, we can actually do without tagging the agent, right? I've just set this up for demo purposes. But in reality, we just need to have event subscription, for example, on Slack, and all the agent just needs to do is jump in instantly. But we're going to tag an agent. So we'll tag Charles. So we've gone through for Jimmy. We talked a bit about Chinedu. Charles is our L1 SOC analyst. So we just tag Charles and tell Charles to start investigating, right? So investigate. Typically, I don't even need to tell Charles anything. He's just going to start doing whatever he needs to do. Rushit, thanks for that. Thanks for sharing the benchmark. So I've told Charles to investigate, right? So that's the first thing. Let me go on to other trades as well. I'm just going to tell Charles investigate, and then let's see. Okay, it's just so we don't spend too much time. So this is past the ash. Let's get Charles again. Our top L1 guy, never sleeps, always awake, never slumbers, because yeah, sleep is for the weak. No, just kidding, but okay, so let's go back in here. So we started with, so this was 730. No, I'll go to the recent one, 741. Yep. Let me see, 741. Yeah, okay. So I told Charles to investigate. Charles is investigating this. He had to come back to us. This has one reply. Okay, this has two replies. Great. Okay, so Charles is still checking context and everything. So he's just going to act like, this is an actual incident, right? Again, what I've done is I'm giving it raw data. So I've generated synthetic data of actual incidents. So that data would have, all kinds of things, source IP, destination IP. It's not analysis, it's just raw data, of a particular incident. And then I've just given that to Charles now to start investigating. So now Charles has posted the investigation, right? So we'll go through it quickly. So what exactly is happening in here? Okay, good. Okay, I'll come back to your question. So the first thing is, okay, this is a credential theft, MFA bypass on IT admin accounts. There's a user, James Adeyemi, clicked URL in email from spoofed sender. The URL redirected to credential harvesting, etc. There's a chance that credential may have been submitted, right? etc. So Charles jumps in. Now, traditional environment, what would you do? When you have such a case, the first thing is you go to your email security gateway, right? So you get the sender, you get the recipient email, you're checking, okay, who is the sender? Then you get the sender and you're figuring out, okay, has the sender sent the same email or similar email to other people in the organization? No. Then you go to that particular email and you're like, okay, I need to download this email as .eml. Then you download the email and you're like, oh, I can't actually run this. I need to take it to a sandbox. And then it depends on how hands-on you are, right? So if you're very hands-on, you would want to then extract it, right? So from that email, you want to then extract what's happening. Is there an attachment in there or not? You want to check the header of that email. You want to check the body of this email. Does it have anything embedded in it or not? If it has an attachment, then you want to then start, right? If you could do malware analysis or throw that in a sandbox, do dynamic analysis as well, step through, right? And see if that attachment is making outbound connection or not, etc, etc, right? And so you go through that process. That typically takes you 30 to 1 hour, if you really know what you're doing, right? But for a lot of times when you just throw AI agents in there, right? So now this guy's done the analysis. So it tells us, okay, this is a phishing attack against an IT admin account, da 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 da. Again, don't forget, the only thing is picked is this. And then he had to dig into the actual incident to figure out what has happened. So what has happened? James received a phishing email that bypassed this. This is a newly registered domain. So you can already see. So he's done his analysis. He can see this is a newly registered domain. It has clean reputation at time of delivery, etc, etc, etc. This is why it worked because of this reason. What concerns me the most, right? And then it starts, because of whatever it says, right? And then it does hand off to your L2 agents and it tags the L2, right? Typically, this L2 is meant to respond. Just 1 minute. Okay, it's meant to respond, but again, like I said, I've just set this up. I'm just gonna tag Shadi because maybe Shadi is sleeping. But Shadi, wake up. Yeah, I'm just gonna tag Shadi to this and just leave it at that. So ideally, if this was configured well, you just have the agents speaking to each other. I don't even need to get involved at all. You don't need the human in the loop or anything. And Shadi just picks that up. So we're going to leave Shadi with that thread. We'll move on to another analysis. Lovely. Okay, I can see this. So this is past the hash, right? Let's go through this. So lateral movements, multiple NTLM authentication attempt, etc., using the hash of domain admin, etc., etc., etc. Then child starts, right? What exactly happened? Kwame started his normal day, gets the timestamp, tells us why this worked exactly, tells us the actual command that was run, and then it goes through the process chain, right? It tells us the timeline, etc. Now, when it gets to this point, now as L1, in every environment, of course, L1 would have what, maybe a few months of experience, so about maybe 4 years, 5 years max. And so this L1 guy now has done analysis, right? So Charles has done analysis based on, what he knows and what he thinks and blah, 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 right? And so now it's gotten to a point where he says, now I need to hand over this to L2. This was just now, right? So this was just what we had just run. This was like 6 minutes ago, right? So Charles comes up. So in less than 2 minutes, in less than 2 minutes, Charles has done the L1 analysis. L1 analysis is done, and he says, okay, hand over to L2 in priority order. We need to treat this as full domain compromise. We need to do XYZ, XYZ, right? And then he gives that off to Shade. Now, Shade is our L2 SOC analyst. Again, Shade and this L1 guy, they are all working hand in hand, they are working together. The L2 picks it up and it says, okay, what L2 is adding to Charles' analysis. It goes through it, right? He answers this, okay, explains. And then if there's a need, so then it says my verdict, right? So my verdict is true positive, P1 domain compromise. I need to escalate to human because that's the instruction we've given it. And then instantly it tags the SOC guy, right? So it could be L3 or the CISO or whatever. And it says, you need to make the emergency call now, recommend getting your admin, da, 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 da. If there's a serious issue, now you need to take action, right? So just in this thread, we can clearly see these are just agents speaking to each other. So you can see agent to agent communication. There's no human in the loop. I had no business in this thread, and then instantly it tags humans, and then humans are responding. Benga, what I'm going to do is your last question, Olu Benga, I'm just going to put that in. So I'm just going to ask. Lovely. I love the questions, right? So what I'm going to do is, let me do this. We're going to get AI to answer your questions. So let's put Charles and Shade. Okay. So I'm just going to paste your questions. Who is the second question? Who has the second question? Olua Bukola. Okay. At all, there's no framework. There's nothing. All you need is a skill file. But we'll give the agents this to us to answer, and then we'll see. Oluwaseyi, so from experience, I actually haven't seen any wrong recommendation, right? Because okay, let's take a step back. So we've asked these questions. I'll wait for the answer. I'm going to ask another question as well. Can you both share your skill file? Okay, cool. They've actually responded to your questions. So let's go through it. This is for you, Olubenga and Oluwabukola. So how do the agent build and improve their knowledge base? Do you need to integrate SOPs etc.? And then for Oluwabukola, how does the agent know the steps to follow for unique incident? Does this need to be specific? Okay, so good questions. We don't learn in the traditional ML sense, right? Instead, our knowledge lives in files. So you have so.md. This is peculiar to OpenClaw, right? So he has so.md file, he has agent, and he has memory, and then he saves his memory based on this timestamp, right? And then it has Q files, right? So pretty much how does it work? The skill file would tell it, you know what? In fact, let's take a step further, right? So let's say, um, can you break down how you work step by step? What files you refer to? Your heartbeats, so identity, memory, and just explain how you operate. Okay. So in getting these agents to work, unlike your traditional environments where you would have SOC playbooks, right? And you say, oh, step one, this is what you need to do. Step two, this is what. No, we're not doing any of that. In fact, you know what? To answer some of the question, why not let's go through it? Let's see this. So I added this when this was today, right? And so I just said, hey, Charles, and it says, hey, Rotimi, what's up? Anything suspicious on the queue? Da 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 da. And then initially, because this is just fresh, he's a fresh agent, he doesn't have any identity, nothing. And then I say, what's your skill set? And he says, oh, just basic things, integration, dev to etc. Right? Um, and then, okay, I don't have the command in here. And then the only thing I had to do is just tell it your identity is this. You are a SOC analyst with over 6 years of experience. You must always investigate, blah, 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 blah. And then that's it. And that's all I needed, for Charles to start working. Nothing else, right? And of course, you can enhance that over time. So let's go through it. So I was asking questions, right? So I said, so can you break down your work etc, right? So it says when the session starts, I wake up with zero memory of previous sessions. Of course, you can also make it remember previous session as well. I'm using Claude Sonnet. So the first thing I do is I read my core files to reconstruct who I am and what's going on. So he checks the so.md file. This is the personality. This is the values. This is the SOCRO reporting style. This is who I am. Agent.md, this is my operation rules. User.md, this is information about Rotimi. That's the user, what matters. This is the memory, and that's all, right? So every message I receive goes into my context window. I use these tools, etc. And then this is how I work. So I just wake up, I read call files, I load skills. And so let's go into some of them, right? So let's ask you this question. Your so.md file. So we're going to ask Charles, right? And we'll wait for the response as well. So show us the content for the above. Okay, I'm just going to wait for Charles on that. Let's go back to Shade also. Shade again, similar. So I'm going to tell Shade the same thing. Oops. Let me do that again. Shade, show us the content for the above. Okay. And then we're just gonna wait for Shade to respond to us. Just 1 second. Okay, Charles is responding. Okay, so now Charles has responded, right? So I told Charles to. So Charles says, I have so.md file. So.md file is who you are. Okay. Just 1 second. I don't think this 1 second. Agent attend the session. Okay, I need this to give you my skill file. Notice chat. Okay, 1 second. Can you share your skills, your SOC skill file for us to go through? So I'm just gonna wait, and then wait for it to respond. Okay, so you ask core values. Again, this can be modified, right? So the so.md file, I'm not a chatbot, I'm becoming someone, blah, 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 blah. SOC specific rules in so.md file. Every incident report must tag Shade, no exceptions. L1, you must pick it up first and always analyze. You must post analysis, da, 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 da. L2 must do this, etc, etc, etc. And then you can give all your instruction. We can even change it. So for example, this is so.md file for Shade, right? So Shade says, thread rule, absolutely always reply within the thread. Incident tagging, this is what I need to do. Incident pickup rules, this is what I need to do. Exploitability confirmation, I must never mark a vulnerability exploitable without da 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 da. And then he has all of this, right? And so we can change it. So we can say, for example, to one of the questions that we got there, we can say, for example, Charles, now write this. So we want to change Charles' identity, right? So we can say, now write this as your identity and into your SO file, you are a L1 SOC analyst with over 4 years of experience in malware analysis, incident triage, incident response, etc, etc, etc. Okay. Make this quite technical. Share with me before you write this into your soul. Share with me before you write it into your soul. Okay, let's just make that very short. And so we leave that to Charles, right? Again, at the end of the day, it's using Sonnet, right? It's using, an LLM model that knows what it's doing. It's going to write this up. And then we can, if it makes sense to us, then we can just tell it, okay, write this into your soul, and that's it. That's all it needs to do. Now, this is the first step. The other steps is you can now start giving it tools, right? Again, the agent, so whatever I'm running right now is just running from my PC, right? Which I'm currently working from. But again, you can host this somewhere on some instance and all that and just do it securely. So let's see. So this is what I told Charles, right? Now write this as your identity. Now Charles is proposing something. So Charles is saying, okay, I'm proposing this identity, right? So experience 4+ years in security operations, my specialization, malware analysis. I can do all of this, incident triage, incident response. Tools I know, right? So CrowdStrike, Falcon, da da da, SIM, he knows this, sandboxes, he knows this, forensic, he knows this, etc. Okay, and all I need to do is just tell it, okay, fine, write that into your skills. That's all. Or write that into your soul. Okay, now write the above into your soul plus skills. And that's it. That's all I need to do. Now we can expand this as well, right? So let's say, for example, within your organization, you have specific tools that you've paid for. You can easily give it tools, right? So you can say, okay, Charles, you're going to be using this tool. If you want to mention the path, you can. Otherwise, you will figure out the path as well. And then this is where it gets to do. Let me see the other questions so I can move on to something else. Um, Is it safe to introduce self-instantiating agents within an agentic SOC in response to recurring security challenges? And what governance, validation, and containment mechanisms are required to ensure that this emergent do not introduce new security risk? Okay, so I think I've kind of talked about that a bit, Favor. So a couple of points. You need to always have guardrails, right? So for example, to your question, right, I can say, Charles, let me push your question. Charles, I believe I strong no, no I Charles, Favor, I'm gonna use Favor. Favor strongly believes you could go rogue. We need to implement guardrails and control gates to ensure you don't go rogue. Tell me what we can do. Okay? So we push that to Charles. Charles tells us what he thinks, and then we tell Charles, write that into your identity, write that into your soul, write that into your instruction, and that's it. And that's it, right? And so subsequently, Charles now has these guardrails, and then Charles also then protects against it. I think the mistake that we humans have made over time is that we always of course we believe that we are smart and all that, but we always think that these AI agents are just very dumb and they don't really know what they are doing and all of that. But what we've done within our organization is we've had this paradigm shift where we're like, you know what? Why not ask AI first? What is AI going to do in this scenario with the right context? So, Favor, let's see what Charles is saying. So, Favor is not wrong to raise it. Autonomous agent with two acts are generally resurface. Yeah, I'll think about it. So, what green road means? Guardrails already have what you can add on top. So, you can have approval gates, and so you can require explicit approval, right? So, for anything that needs to do with execution or whatever, you can make sure that the audit log is there's an audit log for everything it's doing. You can do this. All I just need to do is okay, go ahead and implement it, and that's it. And then that is done. Now, for your audit log, if you want that to be pushed elsewhere, again, you can tell the agent. It pushes it to your same, it needs to push it somewhere to your whatever log collection, IP or whatever you have, you can tell it, right? And then that part gets taken care of. Roshit, thanks for answering the questions. I think, yeah, you can also go through some other ones to see there. What are your non-limited? Let me see. Is there any other? Okay. Roshit, thanks for that. So I'll move on quickly to another interesting topic as part of this. So we've touched on vulnerability management, we've touched on SOC. I still have two more to go through. Boss, do you want to jump in before, or I should just go on with the flow?
So, uh, how dare I obstruct your thunder? The idea is for you to, you know,
Okay.
I like the fact that Roshit is already giving you assistance, your
Yeah,
agent on the
Roche,
session.
thanks. Yeah. He's,
So thanks,
we
Roshit.
work
So
closely on a
Rotimi, I
lot
think
of
you
those
should go
things.
ahead because um, we have time. We don't necessarily have time, but I'm sure
Yes.
people are happy to
Cool.
see the two other
Cool.
sessions. And then the good thing is you've answered a good number of the questions, so we won't do too many questions. So we're happy for you to do the
Yes, correct.
two more use cases, and then we close out. That should work.
Correct. So we go to the third one, right? So we have Iyano. Shout out to Iyano on the call. So Iyano, who are you? What can you do? Let's ask Iyano. Who are you and what can you do? What skill sets do you have? Okay, so we're just going to ask Iyano that. Yeah, so we're just gonna ask Iyano that. And so I'm just waiting for Iyano to respond, but I'll just go through what we have in here. Okay, so Yano has a response for us. Hey, I'm Yano, your secure code expert. This is what I can do SaaS. I can do security code review, etc. And I also work hand in hand with the pen tester, Chinedu, right? So anytime Chinedu tags me or whatever, we can work together. So how does this work, right, in practice? In a lot of organizations, you would have your SaaS solutions, right? Some people still use Veracode, some use checkmarks, etc. And most times they end up just throwing up 1001 issues, right? They would tell you, oh, there's a vulnerability on line 6 or line 412, etc. Without realizing that, that might not actually be an exploitable vulnerability, or that's a function that is not actually exposed through the API gateway, right? So what we've done in this case is, again, we've built an agent, we've given it the identity, we give it the right toolkit, we tell it, if you want, you can give it GitHub apps or GitHub part token, just so you can clone from GitHub. And then this can become your secure code or security code review agents. Now, let's see how it works hand in hand with penetration test, right? So we go to this, right? For a lot of organizations, so I'm just going to use one example. There's something I was playing around there, and so I'll just go through it. So Chinedu, right? So who is Chinedu? And then you would see how Chinedu and Iyanu work hand in hand, right? So tell us about you. What can you do? What level of experience do you have? Okay, so this is Chinedu, our pen tester. And then we're going to see how Chinedu and Iyano are going to work hand in hand. So while I'm waiting for Chinedu to respond, we're going to go through a project. Just a second. Let me okay, 1 second. So Chinedu has come back, right? So Chinedu, I'm a penetration tester, I'm a red teamer, I'm your go-to guy for breaking things. I can do recon, OSINT, passive, active. I can do web app, API test, full OWASP. I can do infrastructure network. I can do exploitation, post exploitation, etc. Okay. And I also work together with Iyanu, right? So Iyanu handles source code reviews and do active exploitation, etc., etc., right? So this is so now we're going to go through one scenario, right? So I'm just going to tag Chinedu, and I'm going to say, Chinedu, can you pen test this? Now, this is an open source project. I think quite a number of people on the call might be familiar with this, but vulnerablebank.org has been set up. Shout out to the maintainers. So it's vulnerable by default. It has quite a number of vulnerabilities in there. So this is the source code, and then this is the actual dynamic application that exists. So I'm just telling Chinedu, can you pen test this, right? This is a new session, and then and then we just wait for Chinedu. Now, for a lot of organizations, what do? You would have pen testers on your team, or you would have pen testers outsourced, and a lot of times when you want to do this kind of activity, you would then pay, right? You pay heavily to have the pen testers do this and all that. But now these days you have a lot of penetration testers that are using AI. Of course, I'm not saying, I don't think we're there yet, where agents are. So let's say this. So I don't think we're there yet, where agents are or can fully do pen test end to end. Um, no, let me rephrase that. So they can, but there's also a need for you to still have humans somewhere, right? So Chinedu now has tagged, Iyanu, you need to do this, you need to review this and all that, whatever, right? So we are waiting for Iyanu, but just because I'm not sure if the session handling is working well between Chinedu and Iyanu, I'm just going to do the same thing, right? So I'm just going to tell Iyanu this, right? So I'm just going to copy paste the same thing in the same thread, and I say, new session, and I call Iyanu in there, right? So I've given Iyanu the repo. Now they all have separation of concerns, right? So Iyanu already has what it's doing. All Iyanu does is just source code reviews. And then Iyanu needs to work together hand in hand with the penetration tester, right? So Iyanu is currently reading the thread. Iyanu has gone to the repo. Iyanu is going to clone the repo now. And then it's going to go through it, right? And figure out if there are vulnerabilities that exist or not, right? And so just gonna wait a little bit. I'll quickly go through the chat to see if there are some questions that I've not been able to answer. 1 second. So is it valid enough to say that owner is a dying role? So Chooks, your question is a bit I think, yeah. So Chuk says, is it valid enough to say that L1 SOC analyst role is a dying role? If so, what's the of an entry-level security analyst interested in SOC work as they kind of advance to L2? So different organizations have varying maturity level. So what that means is, there are still organizations where you can still go in as L1. And then there's still organizations where they need that skill set. Let's forget the title for a minute, but they need that skill set, right? So within my current organization, for example, we've been recruiting, security professionals. So, I'm still actively recruiting for red teamers and blue teamers. And usually for blue teamers, for example, the SOC guys, there are a couple of things I always look out for, right, when I'm interacting with them. I don't really care so much about the label, whether you're L1, L2, whatever it is, right? I'm more concerned about skill set, right? So I want to say, I want to know if you're passionate. I want to know what kind of, okay, so this is done. I'll go back to this in a bit. I want to know, are this guy's really passionate or not? What do you do in your free time? What do you do weekends when you're not resting? Do you participate in CTFs or hackathons? Do you do your own research on the side? Have you signed up on TryAcme or Hack the Box or any of those platforms? Are you doing malware analysis on the side? What exactly do you do? What do you do? How do you enhance your skill set, right? So for me, it goes back to that. And if you're able to do all of that and you go for an interview, I don't think an interviewer really cares if you're L1 or L2 or whatever. All they are saying is this person is skilled and I want to have them on my team. So definitely there's always a room or there's always chance for this, right? So I'm just going to tag Chinedu in there because I'm still doing man in the middle now. But ideally, agents just need to speaking to each other. Chinedu, can you pick that up, and start the pen test? Right. So let's go through this, right? So Yano has done the source code analysis, right? So he looked at the repo. He says, "Oh, this is critical. There's a coded JWT secret somewhere in there. The algo for JWT was set to none. There's SQL injection, so you can already see that you have SQL injection in here. There's mass assignment, etc, etc, right? So he comes up with all of these things. There's hard coded admin secrets, right? So he was able to do this what in maybe 2 minutes, let's say. Of course, it all boils down to how deep or detailed. Yeah, if I can't tell you target, it came from okay, fine. Okay, Yano has gone first. Yano just shared the analysis above. Now you can start. Again, this is just based off instruction, right? So I've given an instruction that anytime there is, a GitHub URL or link, then the first thing it needs to do is it needs to hand off that to Yano. So yeah, so we're just gonna wait for that to happen. And then we'll see what Chinedu is up to. Okay, confirm my source code review is wrapped up and the findings are in the above thread. Chinedu, you are clear to begin. I'm Chinedu, but checking the I don't see. Okay, now Chinedu, I'm just gonna give this to Chinedu so Chinedu can start working. Let me just copy whatever Yano has said. So we have a glitch here from. Okay, good. Chinedu, you can start. We have a glitch here from Slack, but yeah, it's fine. I'm just gonna go to the same example because I had this saved somewhere. So I was just looking at this one yesterday. So the same scenario, right? We want to do the pen test etc. So Chinedu starts, right? It starts in the pen test. This was even before the source code analysis. So Chinedu has gone through, right? It says, oh, I see there's an SQL injection somewhere. I'm able to do this, right? And then I was able to log in and I can see this. Now, this is prior to the source code analysis. So it says this password reset, etc, etc. I see there's IDOR somewhere, etc, etc, right? And then I put in a Yano. Yano is a source code guy. And I say, Yano, you need to work together with this guy on the pen test. Yano says, sure. So Chinedu tags Yano. Rotimi wants us to team up. We need to work together. Yano says, sure. I'm going to pick up where Chinedu left off from. Then Yano starts, right? So Yano starts going through it. He tells us, oh, these are all the vulnerabilities I found, etc, etc. And then Chinedu then picks it up that, okay, fine. Whenever Yano responds or tags me, I need to respond. Okay. So Chinedu picks up from where Yano, and then Chinedu then starts, right? So he picks that static analysis that was done, and then he starts doing dynamic testing, right? So now Chinedu now realized that, oh, I'm able to actually deploy a PHP web shell. And so there's the URL here. I can see there's a race condition in here. This is the post request, etc, etc. And then after everything, Chinedu says, yes, I have 18 findings documented, etc. Iano also aligns, with whatever findings. So these are agent-to-agent communication, right? The agents are speaking to each other, etc. And then I tell Chinedu, okay, I need the PDF report now. I already gave you a format that you need to use. And then we go through that, and then Chinedu eventually ends up with the PDF report, right? All of this in less than, I don't know, let's see, how long did it take? So this started 11. Of course, there was a lot of human in the loop. So let's say 11:30. In barely 40 minutes, the pen test was done, right? Of course, this was because I was nudging and all that, right? But end to end, maybe 15 minutes, let's say, but let's say 30 minutes, whatever. Now we end up with a report like this, which I'm just gonna show us shortly. I think I have that somewhere in here. Just gonna show us the reports. Let's just wait for the report to load. Okay, while the report is loading, I'm just going to put the reports here. So this is the actual report downloaded from the agent. Let's see. Okay, still loading. So at the end of the assessment, right, the same report that we see to the right, all generated by Chinedu. I have zero input into this report. And so, yes, we end up with a report like this. All done by Chinedu, right? So target is this. When did they run the test? July 22nd, overall risk, critical, table of contents, all of this done by the agent, right? Introduction, this is the scope, technical analysis, these are the findings, etc. Executive summary. These are total findings, critical findings, etc. This is the finding summary. Again, the agent is going through that, right? So these are the critical findings. There's SQL injection, there's this, that. And then it goes into introduction. So exactly the same thing you would do as a pen tester, the same way. In fact, for someone that has done pen testing for about 2 decades, one of the most annoying, let me put it that way, parts of pen testing is when you need to come up with reports, right? Because now you need to spend time and you need to come up with a lot of pages, etc. This is what, let me see, how many pages is this? This is about 51 pages documents, right? And so for a lot of pen testers, this is very annoying because now you need to come up with this and you need to take screenshots and all that. But we don't even need to do that. We can have the agent, immediately generate this. So it showed the methodology that was followed, etc. And then we went into the scope. It shows us the technology stack, which was identified during the testing. We go further down, technical analysis, one back is a Python Flask, blah, 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 blah. Let's skip all of this. Then it goes into detailed finding. Again, just like any pen tester. So SQL injection bypass, this is the description, this is the POC. So it even shows the POC. This is the proof of concepts. This is the response that I got back. And then, it also shows whatever you have in here. In fact, you could even tell it to do screenshots. And it's going to get you the screenshots. It would use maybe Selenium or Playwright, open the browser, get the screenshots, and then you have that. And it tells you how to mitigate as well. And so he continues the same thing across, right? Across all the findings. And then you have this beautiful looking report, at the end of it. And then towards the end, then it gives you conclusion. The vulnerable bank application presents an overall risk rating of critical. These are the key chains of exploitations identified. It was even able to do exploits like chains together, right? It was able to do like chained exploitation. And then it tells you your remediation priorities, right? So immediate, you need to fix all of this, then fix this, then fix that, and etc. And it also gives you a nice footer, right? The same thing you would do as a penetration tester. This was prepared for the exclusive use of blah, 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 right? And then boom, and then that's it. Work done, agents is done, let's see what the other guy was doing here. Apply this file something, da, da, da. Okay, cool. And so yeah, and so it brings us to, wait, let me see, what was that thing I was sharing just now? 1 second. And yeah, and so at the end of the day, now you have both agents working, you have your reports ready, and you can always use this every time for whatever pen test you need to do. Of course, for an internal pen test, for example, or even external, as long as you have access, if you have access to the source code, you can pull Yano in. If you do not have access to the source code, great. Chinedu already has his methodology that he follows. So for example, I could ask Chinedu, for example, so let's go to Chinedu, what methodology/harness do you follow? Right? And we just wait for that. I'm going to go through the chat. A couple of things here. Were the findings confirmed that these are not false positives? Yes, they were confirmed because it's part of the methodology. Because for every, so I would go to the downloads again. Let me just quickly share that. So you see, the beauty of what we did was we said POC or GATFO, right? So meaning every time he finds something, he must always make a request to that. He must verify the response. So you can already see the POC in here. Let me look for one example. Let's just look for one example where we got the response, right? So let's say, for example, this. So he made a request. So he says verbose SQL error disclosure. He made the call request, which is this, okay? And he's found a response, which was the 500 internal server error. So it is not just hallucinating or, just coming up with, oh, this is what I think or whatever. No, these are actual requests and responses. So he made a request. This is the POC. He made a request. You can see the response in here. Everything confirmed. Again, it boils down to your harness. It boils down to the instruction you're giving your agents. Let's go back to what I had requested it. So I asked it, I said, what is your full harness? Okay, what do you do exactly? So phase one, I need to do recon, and then I do surface mapping, I do vulnerability discovery, exploitation. I must confirm every finding with a live working POC. There's no theoretical findings. This is baked into his DNA. So there's no reason why it will give you that, right? Because again, it all boils down to the skills and instructions and everything you've given it. Okay, let's ask. We can ask that question. So Chinedu, how much have you spent so far, especially with the just concluded? How much have you spent so far today, with the just concluded pen test of vulnerable bank? Okay. I'm interested in the tokens cost. Okay, so Kay, that's your question. We're just gonna wait for it. Let's get the agent to answer directly. Um, Angela, you mentioned the current agent used in demo and running Sonnet, so you can easily change it, right? It all boils down to how much how much money you're willing to spend, right? So it depends, it varies, right? There are people like personally for pen test, I like to use GLM. So I use GLM 5.2. I found it to be extremely useful with pen test and engagement. Okay, so let's calculate it, right? So here's what, and Rushid, feel free to correct me in the chat as well with the calculation. So Rushid is an experienced AI engineer. So here's what the session data shows. Okay. So we've been running the session for about 3 hours now. Rough cost estimate based on Claude Sonnet 4 pricing, blah, 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 blah. So there was 96, da, da, da. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Cash. Okay, I can only see current. So for current session, we've spent maybe $5, roughly. Maybe a bit more than that. I don't know. Richard, you can put it in the comment section if that's inaccurate. But yeah, this is what we spent. Okay. So I hope that has answered your question. Rough estimate based on pricing. Okay, so you can see session starts. Okay, good. New tokens, yes. Current on finds, 1.7 million tokens read. Okay, cool. So let's even say without the cash, right? Okay, so let's say without the cash, how much would this have been? So we just spent about $5, but let's see. I'm just gonna wait for that. Let me go through the questions. So Angela, you mentioned current agents. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so without the cash, it's still about this amount. So whatever pen test we've done now, I've spent about $7. So you can ask the question again. What's the cost of running? Of course, I'm not saying, this would, fully just replace your what's it called, your external penetration testing service provider, right? Because a lot of them also are using AI now, or AI, these days for AI assisted pen test. But it makes sense, right, to be able to build this or at least have this internal capability, so that, whilst you're doing your internal pen test, you're also able to call in, an external provider for validation. But this just saves the cost. Just imagine that you have this very huge development team, and every day they're churning out maybe 10 to 15 API endpoints, and you need to do the pen test every time, let's say for web apps or for your API pen test, right? So instead of spending calling in an external consultant and just having them do this, every day over and over and over again, these are agents that can just easily do it for nothing, right? This is just about $7. Um, there's something else. Yep, chooks, exactly. That's just, yes, $6 to $7. Yes, correct. For Angela, yes, you mentioned the current agent used does that mean they're not capable? Yeah, I think I already answered that. As we can see, for Bola, it was easy, right? We saw that in the report, right? There were there was idle, right? I believe we had idle, yeah. So there was Bola idle in between. Let's look for the actual vulnerability, right? So you tested it, right? Because again, your agent at the end of the day, so this is even unauthenticated, right? And at some point, it can also register. But the other thing you can do for internal environment, so what we do is we give our agents user, so we give it credentials, right? So for example, for IDOL, we'll give our agents maybe 3 credentials that we already created, right? Just in case maybe you have some captcha somewhere when you're doing registration, or you don't want your agent to go through that also of, doing registrations, right? So you can register, like you can set up like 3 credentials, you can give that to your agents, and you can tell it, save that in your memory. These are going to be your credentials. Whenever you come across, IDOR or Bola or whatever, when you want to test for that, always use the credentials I've given you. And that's it. That's what the agent needs to remember. And then the agent will just, do that. So if you look at the complexity, let's just go through this again, right? So some of the questions that we're getting. SQL injection basic, admin escalation, okay. Password reset pin, okay. Negative transfer, again, that's business logic, right? So your agent is able to figure that out. Unrestricted file uploads, figuring out your file upload, seeing if you can bypass that, right? Content type, MIME type, etc. And just being able to upload. Race condition, again, business logic. Bola, again, business logic, right? So your agents can easily SSRF, your agents can easily find that, right? A lot of times we always underestimate agents, but yeah, what kind of credentials? Privilege? No, no, no. You don't need to give privileged credentials. Why would you? It depends. Again, it depends on what you're testing. When humans are testing idle, what do they do, right? So let's say, for example, a good example, you're testing a banking app, right? It all boils down to the goals and the objectives, right? What exactly do you want to do? Do you want to test as a customer? So you create 2 or 3 customer accounts, right? One could be fully funded, one could have like KYC fully done, etc. Right? So you have those 3 accounts, you give that to your agent, and then your agent can do the pen test, right? That's the scenario, the goal, or the aim. And in fact, you can say, okay, you know what? I want to see if the agents can also do some lateral movement internally, right? So go from a normal user or a normal customer, banking customer, and escalate to being an operator or being a cashier ops person or being the one that approves transactions or etc. Right? Whatever the matrix are. So that could be an example. Or for example, you could say, oh, for an internet banking pen test, for example, okay, I want to have cashier access. So I'm going to create username password for cashier. And then at the same time, of course, you do this within a demo, I mean, not demo, within the staging environment, not production, right? So same time, you would also want to give, let's say, a normal customer access, right? And so you give this to varying accesses to the agent, and then the agent just knows what it needs to do. He logs in as one, he figures out the session token, he saves that, he logs in at the second one as well, gets the session token, and then he can start working on IDOR related or Bola related attacks, right? That becomes very straightforward. Um, yeah, okay. I see Rashid already answered the question around the Sonnet one. Angela, I've answered your question. If not, please feel free to ask again the thread. How does the agent deal with zero-day threats? Can it create detection rules for new attacks being observed in the wild? Okay, so that's an interesting one. I didn't put that in here as an example. But that's an interesting one. So, what we've done internally, and I think organizations could easily learn from that is, so you see, the way we have like different channels, right? You could easily have a channel for like threat hunting, right? So internally we've done that. We have channels for threat hunting. We've subscribed to a lot of TIPs out there, threat intelligence platforms out there. But the other thing that we've seen that works is news spread very fast on Twitter than anywhere else, right? So what we've done is we've built RSS feeds from Twitter. We've gone on Twitter. We have a lot of people that a lot of security professionals that we do think that whenever there's an issue or there's anything, they are one of the first to actually post about it. So we get RSS feed from Twitter. When there's a new tweet, it just comes into the Slack channel, and then you can get your multi-agents just doing that. So you can have one agent, for example, understand, what exactly is this tweet about. You can have another agent, for example, pick that up. You can do a sweep within your organization. Let's say you have an asset inventory. Let's say in your organization, you use Service Desk or ServiceNow or whatever it is, right? Manage Engine, etc., right? And you have a list of all your assets or a list of your applications or a list of your subdomains. The first agents would do triage, right? So it contextualizes the issue. So let's say, for example, there's been a lot of, let me see, what was the most recent incident that a lot of people had to deal with? Let's say, for example, there's been some supply chain attack, for example, some NPM package or extension, malicious one was newly deployed, and a lot of organizations are installing that, right? So let's say that's something that is in the news right now. So everybody's going crazy about it. You get that immediately, one of your trusted people tweets about it. It comes on your Slack, for example. Your first agent takes that, contextualizes it, understands what exactly is this tweet about. I really want to get more about this tweet, right? And then you can, and then from there you can figure out what the IOAs are, etc. Right? I think I could do one quick example here. Just a minute. Let me see. I think we could do one very, very quick example in here, right? I'm just gonna reshare my screen again. Um, so let's say, for example, you go to what's the Aka News, for example. Okay, we're just gonna pick one example. Oops, where is my browser taking time? Okay, needs a restart. Okay, cool. I'm gonna wait for that to work out. Just gonna use Safari instead. Maybe that could be better. So we're going to do I can send. Okay, so cool. I'm just gonna share my screen now. So we just do something very basic, right? Or yeah. So let's say the account news, for example. So this is your number one trusted. Let's say this is what you're using in your organizations, one of the news outlets or whatever it is, right? So we open one new thread. Let me pick some up. Okay, so you have like two items in here. So I pick one of the first ones, right? So and I go to a SOC. Let's go to SOC channel. So let's assume, for example, that you have a threat intel agent, right? It could be anything, right? So I could even tell Charles. Actually, I could tell Charles, I need you to also threat intel skills, threat intel skills, and be able to analyze news and extract IOAs. Okay, we're just building a new skill, right? IOAs. Build this as a new skill for you to use. Okay, so that's that for Charles. I've just given Charles the instruction. We'll wait a little bit for Charles to get back to us, or we can start. So let's assume Charles now is, I'm just going to wait for it a bit, but let's assume that Charles is now a threat intel guy. He understands news and all that. And so you have this news feed, right? So this is a news item. Go through it, get a contextual understanding, right? And build iOS so we can use for detection engineering. Okay, for those of us that are purple teamers. Right. And so we're just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait for this, right? So we'll wait for Charles to do that. So for a lot of
Yeah.
organizations, I mean, this
Rotimi,
is yes,
so let me just give you the insights that we are closing with, so you can
yes.
just narrow down into that as you finish up. So we've seen a lot of practical sessions, a lot of questions. I'm sure people have brought practical questions they've experienced in their attempt at being agentic to you. And we're now, we would want to close out in discussing the future of AI-powered security operations, which is governance, trust, maintaining that human control. Because I also have seen some questions. For example, the most exciting part of this session is where you ask the agent to answer the questions from the session, and it's also we saw from practical engagement, agent to agent, agent to human, agent to agent before human, the human having oversight. So now we now come back to governance, establishing trust, maintaining that human control. Um, Also building continuous human agent feedback loops, which I'm sure you've showed some aspects of it already. And then also practical considerations for organizations adopting agentic security operations, which I think the questions are triggered for you. So we'll close out with that. Good thing is you've answered all the questions, so we can round off with this final display.
Yes. So just to answer that, I mean, a couple of things, right? So let's talk a bit about governance. The starting point is most times when people go into AI, the starting point is they think they can have different set of controls or they think about it differently as compared to what they currently do for humans. And what do I mean by that? Um, right now, for humans, when someone joins your organization, you have your BRAC, your birthright access control, or you have your RBAC, and then you give them access, to systems based on need to know basis, right? And so with agents, it is not different, right? The starting point is who needs to be able to execute this agent? Do I want to have
Mm,
control gates or not? What does my control gate looks like? What does my guardrails look like? So I would go into different things, right? Let me just stop sharing my screen for a second, and maybe I'll just touch on different things. So the starting point is for governance, starting point is access control, right? So who can call my
mhm,
agent? Who can execute my agent? Who can run what actions?
mm,
What can my agent do? Is my agent just
mm,
summarizing, is it just summarizing, or can my agent take action? So if
mm,
my agent can summarize and my agent can take action as well, then I want to have two control gates. So I want to say, I'm going to create a group for the first set, right? The guys that just want to read or interact with my agent and summarize etc. I create a group for that. You're right. I add them into my either your AD groups that you use or Okta groups or whatever you use in your organization. And then the second group, the guys that can execute, right? Again, the same thing. So you create a group and then you add it, and then you go to your agent, same thing we've been doing, and then say, oh, Agent Charles, right? The first group, this guy should only be able to execute this, right? The second group should only be able to execute this. And so you tackle that from an access control point of view. That's the first thing. The
mhm,
second thing is execution. Now, there's a project that we've worked on. Ironically, Rushid, so I worked on it with Rushid. We're looking to open source this very soon. It's called Lobster Lock. So it's an open source, project or initiative that builds a lot of that guardrails, right? So when an agent is executing, right, within an instance, you want to have some level of control as well. You don't want your agent to go rogue because guess what? As humans, you would always sleep and whatever, but you need your agent running 24/7. So how do you ensure that your agent is not just going in there executing crazy things, exfiltrating data, taking your credentials and just posting it somewhere?
So can you let me interrupt you? Can you
Yes.
link this to the AI, OpenAI's recent disclosure of
With
their
with
agents that went rogue?
Hugging Face, right? So that was an interesting one, right? Because so I was reading it this morning. I've not fully delved into that article, but it appeared that they had an agent. I think they were using OpenAI SOL agent model, and then it had kind of escaped. There was like some sandbox escape or something like that, and then this is what had happened. I haven't delved into deep into this particular incident, but this is something we get to see, right? So even on Twitter, you see cases where there's an AI agent that's gone rogue and then just deletes a production database. We've actually seen those cases. What we tend to see day to day, right, for organizations that are very big on AI is this. A good example, you start having an agent like this, and then when you're interacting with it, let's say, for example, like Nuruddin is saying, let's say you're an auditor, for example, and then you are auditing or you're using your agent and you're interacting with your agent, and then the next thing you do is then you tell the agent, oh, can you generate a report, right? So in our case, for the pen test, he attached that report to the Slack thread. But in a lot of cases, agents usually always look for the least resistant path for everything they need to do. So what does that mean? They look for a way. Like it could be crazy, right? So they look out, they're thinking, this is my objective, this is my goal, this is my mission. I must find the easiest way to go about this. So when you tell an agent, oh, I need you to generate a report and everything, the first thing is thinking is, oh, I want to generate a report. Oh, I cannot attach to this channel, but what can I do? Oh, I can actually go on Vessel. So Vessel, Vercel, right? You can go on Vessel, or oh, I can actually spin off a GitHub page and I can just upload in there. And so before you know what's happening, the agent looks for a free hosting website, uploads your confidential PII, sensitive information, PDF file or CSV or whatever, and then it just pushes it out there, right, to the internet. So one of the things we tend to see is that, guardrails are extremely important. For whatever agent you are building, there are soft guardrails, there are hard guardrails, right? So hard guardrails means that in some organizations, they even do things like IP restrictions. So they say, as an agent, you cannot make any outbound connection, any outbound traffic, except to 123 or 12 or whatever the case might be, right? So those are some of the things. There are also other things like tool calls, right? So execution calls. So you can restrict the tool calls that an agent can make, right? So when you build your agent, you can say you can only call this 123 tools. You can do cat, you can do file read, etc. Right? These are the things you can do. So those are some of the controls. Last but not the least, audit logging. This is important because this, for example, it ties back into other controls, right? So you cannot protect what you do not see. You cannot build controls over what you do not know, right? So audit logging, your agent must always generate logs, every execution log. So every interaction I've had with it, my agent needs to be able to tell who interacted, when was the interaction done, where was the
Has
interaction
confirmed that
done,
cyber attacks say
where was the interaction done, right? What was the timestamp for the interaction? And what were the two calls that were made? And was there file modification? Was there file creation, etc., right? So when you have that information and you pipe that into your SIM solution, whatever you're using, you can even have another agent that checks that and then tells you, oh, I think there's an agent that has gone rogue, right? And just throws up an alert just because an agent is going rogue. So when you combine all of these things, I think you're able to have like, some sort of governance over what you are, doing, over what you're building, etc. And just the basic hygiene, the basic cybersecurity hygiene just applies as well. Thanks, Badabo.
Okay, okay, hold on, Rotimi. So one last question. Someone sent it to me, sent it to me through WhatsApp. How does, and it links with the audits that you mentioned. So how does this hold up with auditors, especially where they are worried about ensuring human in the loop, especially for, say, security events that involve financial transactions? And also, how can this be audited from access change review perspective? I don't know if you get that.
Okay, let me see. So I'm looking at this. So the first one was from Alex, and I think it was a follow-up from Alex. So Alex had talked about how does the agent deal with authentication issues across various log sources, right? So the starting point for that, and just to backtrack into Nuru's question, right? So the starting point for that is, like Rushid has explained, at the end of the day, you want to just a typical SIM, any SIM solution, right? You want to have your log collection somewhere, right? You're indexing your logs, you're passing in, normalizing your logs, etc., and you're training up detections, right? And so when you're doing that, you want to say, can I expose this to an API endpoint to my agents? Can I ensure that my agents can always, reach out through just one endpoint to all these log sources? So you can have 10, 15, 20, 50 log sources downstream. You have your middleware, your middle layer in there, and then you have your agent just sitting at the top, right? And so your agent just needs, a way to be able to interact, downstream with the log sources, right? So, and I think that is how you can undo that. Now, the other thing is, how would you give the agent access? Now, if your agent is hosted in the cloud, for example, you can just integrate that with your secret manager, right? So within our environment, we are doing that. We just have the secret manager, and then we just have the variable name just within the agent without hard coding any credentials in the agent. So the agent knows that every time I need to access whatever, I go to the variable name. I already have connectivity, right? And so you can just go to the secret manager, fetch whatever it needs to fetch, and then use that without storing that data. Now, back to what Nura said. So, how does this hold up with auditors, especially where they are worried about ensuring human in the loop, especially for, say, security events that involve? So, the thing is, I think for auditors, the concern has always, of course, starting point first is as humans, right? When we do not understand something, or we can't kind of comprehend something, we just automatically think it is risky, right? We think, oh, this is extremely risky, right? Why should I be doing this? But for auditors, they want to follow the AAA principle, right? So you want to be sure that, again, to what I had said earlier on, right? I want to know who has done what, when was it done, why was it done, right? Where was it done, right? And then the timestamp, right? So if you're able to answer all of those questions, and of course, yes, for sensitive things, you can start with human in the loop first. this is what we do, right? So at the moment, aside just leading cybersecurity where I currently work, I also lead AI and automation programs for both the finance and the compliance teams, right? And so let's talk about finance, right? So for finance, for example, you would say, yes, for transactions, for decisions related to transactions, you want to have human in the loop. Great, right? So we could start with that, right? We could start with that. So we could say, for example, let the analysis, the triage, the analysis, etc., let all of that be done by an AI agent. And when it summarizes the decision that needs to be taken, you can have a button where you need humans to then click approve or deny. And then this is where you have human in the loop, right? And then the human approves it, and then you can work with it. So you can easily have that. So for a lot of organizations, they start with that. They measure that over time. They check that for maybe 3 weeks, 1 month. And when they are sure and confident, in what the AI is given, in the judgment given by the AI, then they can then just remove the human in the loop. But again, ensure it is auditable, right? Because the other thing is, yes, it is one thing for you to audit the actions taken by the AI agent, but it's another thing for you to ask a question that who has access to these AI agents and who can act on behalf of, or who can impersonate the AI agent, right? So that also becomes another tough thing to answer. But again, it's just audit logging, your traditional audit logging still works here, just ensuring that that visibility exists. Sam, I think there's a question from Sam. Let me just quickly pick that up. Given the risk of third-party AI providers, is it better for enterprises to deploy their own fine-tuned models or rely on commercial? So it depends, right? And I like to say it depends because it depends on the environment you operate within, right? So if you're a regulated environment, for example, yes, Dapo, I think I'm liking the response there. So if you're a regulated environment, right, you might say, oh, this LLM's provider, they have their data center in a, jurisdiction that is not supported. Or for example, for a lot of Chinese or Japanese models, for example, right, some organizations will say, oh, I don't know where this model is hosted. Someone would have access. This model has access to data. And so there's just a lot of propaganda, around that, right? I would say do whatever works, for your organization. There are certain organizations that are able to spin off like smaller models, right? And then they can get work done, right? They can spin off smaller open source models and then get work done. There are some that believe in frontier models just because of the capability and intelligence. And they're thinking, you know what, why should I spend time on infrastructure resources and spinning off instances? If I can easily, get return on investment, if I go for a frontier model like your OpenAI, Gemini, or your Anthropic, right? So again, it just kind of varies, right? It varies. I guess that's that with the questions. Willabo, I don't think there's anyone that have not been answered so far.
Yes, 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 yes. I think time well spent. Time well spent. Almost 2 hours. We don't ever get this long, but definitely that's what happens when we are practical and hands-on. We can also tell from the questions that we've been getting that um, you know, people are already getting into the zone when it comes to agentic. Um, and the one thing is clear, executing it effectively is very critical. And that's why we think it's something topical that we should bring up here today. I would say it was been a very practical and productive session. If you still have more questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we would connect you with Rotimi or help you get those responses. And if there are some additional assessments you need to do, you need a review of what you are setting up and to see how you are doing, please also reach out to us to connect you with Rotimi as a resource. So Rotimi, this is where I would thank you for the time today. Um, I'm sure a lot of us on this call have become more agentic as we go. And most likely there will be a part two to this session, where a lot of us have our agentic stories, specific use cases, issues and challenges, in production environments, and also experiences that can enrich, a future session. So thank you a lot, Rotimi, for this session. And maybe I should just give you a chance to give us a pattern line as we go. You know how it is now.
Peace
Give
out.
us a partner. What
Peace
should we
out.
go with? All right, all right.
No,
Thank
but
you,
yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
Mm,
just something. So I think just one thing I want to say, right? So, I think for a lot of people, when they think of AI, it just feels very, it's just a concept that in general they think, "Ah, this is just something I read in the media. There's just a lot of hype. This is not real. This doesn't work. These guys are just, it's just
mhm,
bubble, right? The way we say it, right? It's just
mhm,
bubble.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
But the reality is it does work. Of course, there's a journey as well, right? So for a lot of organizations, even for your personal self, right? And this is for people, for people that are looking to learn, get into this and all that, there's a personal journey, right? You need to invest time, effort, and all that, and it is doable, right? But at the same time,
mhm.
also, it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh yeah, AI is going to solve everything. Of course not, right? But you need to go through that journey, and it makes your life easy. One thing I wanted to say, I was telling one of my guys had built an AI agent that triages cloud incidents, right? So previously, there's an incident, you need to log in into AWS, GCP, you need to go and figure out what has happened and spend time. So the guy had built an agent, in milliseconds, it does the analysis, does everything, pulls the human in, everything is done. So I told the person, I'm like, okay, great, initiative, right? In fact, I think we need to come up with like a video recording. Let's just like some fun video about this agent, right? And just be able to like demo it. So the idea I came up with was, I said, think about this, right? We've gone on vacation, as colleagues. So a work hangout or whatever it is, right? And everybody's just there by the poolside. And then the next thing is, you just get an alert, right? And you just see, oh, there's an alert. This is CrowdStrike or whatever it is. But then you're just not bothered because you know that the agents that are just going to do the work for you, right? So, and I think for a lot of people, this is how you kind of need to envisage, how AI can become very useful in our days to day, right? It's not just, throwing things into ChatGPT and just asking questions, but just, allowing agents to take control. And of course, with you just orchestrating everything that's happening. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting journey. Everyone
All
should
right,
get
all
started.
right. Nice one, nice one, nice one, nice one. Let's hand over back to the organizers. Ayomide, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Rotimi. It's very insightful session. I learned a lot. My daughter is so full right now, and we are grateful that this conversation is happening at this time and everybody can plug in. And want to briefly say it doesn't end here. If you still have your questions, you can reach out to us at services@century.io. We've pasted the address on the chat box and also our social handles for you to follow us and keep engaging with our content. Thank you once again, everybody. We've come to the close of this session. And once again, thank you, Bo. Thank you, Rotimi. It's good to have you. All right, bye, everyone.
All right, bye.
Nice one, man. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone. Bye.